Well, hello, AP World History. Here we are again. All right, well, looks like we're going to finish off this section on, or this unit on video. We've got 3 slides left to wrap it up. And the last slide is pretty much just kind of almost like a review slide. So we should be able to get this done in right about 30 minutes, all right? Or less, no, I don't know, 30 minutes. All right, this is where we finished off on our last video, okay? And so I'm going to pick her up, moving right on over to here. All right, changing social hierarchies. So the way society arranges itself, right? You know, economic classes, social classes, all of that sort of thing. And thinking of all of the changes that have occurred here in Unit 4. You know, the discovery of the New World and, you know, colonization, all that. There's just no way that we're not going to be able to avoid some significant change happening when it comes to this. But we're going to look beyond just that as well, and focus on how social hierarchies were transforming in different points all over the world. In a way, we've already kind of hashed it out in the Americas, although we'll wing back on that. Okay, and so I'm going to start you first on looking at some societal changes, and we're going to go back to our old friends, the Ottoman Empire. Okay, again, you know, in our time frame that we're dealing with here in Unit 4, the Ottoman Empire, while wounded, is still functioning and still a thing, and so you know, we can't quite yet, you know, describe them as being just kind of, you know, write them off kind of a thing. All right. As time progresses from our 1450 to 1750 time period, though, this is a little bit of what we see going on as kind of like the big picture. That being that we're starting to see within the Ottoman Empire kind of the rise of kind of a warrior aristocracy that is increasingly pretty much acting in an advisory role to the sultans of the Ottoman. These advisors, the name that they're given is that second word you see there, viziers. Okay, and they are definitely going to be seeing their profile rise during this time frame, where some of the weaker sultans that we'll have in the later years of the Ottoman Empire are going to rely more and more and more on the viziers in terms of the actual running of the government. You know, again, and many of them come from this, you know, again, this warrior aristocracy. Some of them janissaries. We see the janissaries during this time period, who, you know, those very, very humble beginnings, and many of them who are gaining more power, political power, more societal power, more prestige. And so we have that sort of thing going on. Timar, the last read you have there, is a reference to land grants, so almost like, you know, gifting land, territory, and this was something that increasingly we saw the sultans making use of, this practice of Timar to reward viziers and others that they saw as, you know, being in their favor. And just another one of those ways that other people are going to be able to rise themselves up societally as they are awarded these big chunks of land. Religious tolerance. This will be another one that kind of sets the Ottoman Empire apart. They allow Christians and Jews to live in the Ottoman Empire free of any kind of, you know, interference, discrimination. For the Jews in particular, this comes at a time when a lot of countries in Europe are kicking the Jews out, basically are saying no Jews. The Spanish, infamously, in the late 1400s, began the process of kicking Jews out of their country, and they're just joining along with others. And so the Ottoman Empire is pretty much inviting Jews to come to their empire and saying, you know, you can live peacefully here. There's not conditions. There are conditions attached to that. There are conditions attached to that. People of the Jewish faith have to live in certain parts within the empire. And so, they don't have complete freedom of movement, or at least, in terms of creating where their communities. They aren't allowed to take on government positions of power, things like that. So, and they have to pay a tax. They have to pay a tax because they're not Muslim, and some of that also spills over to the Christians as well, who live within the Ottoman Empire. But bottom line, they're not going to harass you. They're not going to, discriminate or threaten your life because you have a different religion. You're allowed under those conditions to stick around. All right. The role of women is transforming during this time. I guess one of the ways I can maybe illustrate that is with the story of Roxolana, who, kind of like the Janissaries, is kidnapped originally from Eastern Europe and brought to the Ottoman Empire to be used as a slave. Specifically, she is put into the harem of Suleiman, Suleiman the Great. Going back to those earlier sultans, and she over time. And by the way, a harem is usually a collection of women who were there for the sultan's pleasure. A lot of times, some of the favored women of his harem would become his wives, because there was some polygamy going on there. But Roxolana over time became kind of the favored, and ended up being becoming a wife of Suleiman, and probably the most influential wife that he had. She ends up helping with some of the kind of even some of the urban planning in parts of the Ottoman Empire, in Istanbul, and designing, helping to direct the designing of public works and things like that. And so starts your life as you could kind of almost like from slave to right there, the heights of power. And I'm not saying that hey, that was the story for all women in the Ottoman Empire, but there was that's reflective of the fact that there was a little bit more of a forward-thinking view of women. But let's just not confuse that with women having equal rights. They did not. Okay. And then the slave trade. The basically, they do make use of the slave trade in the Ottoman Empire, but it's kind of an internal slave trade. Their empire is still big enough to where they are able to draw from some of the parts of the empire to supply those slaves. When they were still in their empire growing phase, they used the same kind of, think about the Janissaries we've already learned about. Again, the idea of prisoners of war, things like that, typically are going to be, those who produce the slaves that will be used within the Ottoman Empire. Okay. And just another reminder for us that, don't get fixated that, slavery is just this African thing. Slavery is being used widespread in large portions of the world at this point in time. And yeah, just keep that perspective in there. Okay. All right, Mughals, we want to shift over and look at changing social hierarchies within the Mughal Empire while they're still hanging on to life. Again, we're bouncing around with time. Thank you, College Board. And so I know last time we were talking about the Mughals was, hey, this is how they, finally kind of lose control of it. And now we're back to talking about them like, no, they're functioning again. Just roll with it, kids. All right, just roll with it. Again, we've talked about this before, Akbar, and tolerance of all these different faiths, curiosity in all these different faiths, including Catholics. All right, and so just that little reminder there that that had that impact on the hierarchies within their country, that they too practiced this concept of tolerance. All right, moving on to the Qing dynasty, and going back to the days of Manchu, the rule by the Manchu. Again, this is taking China back to being ruled by foreigners. And we have our years and years and years of the Chinese being ruled by Chinese. We have the Yuan dynasty where the Mongols are ruling them, and then the Mongols back and the Chinese back, and now now, being ruled by non-Chinese again. The Manchu were not as, remember the Mongols really didn't have a lot of dogma when it came to religion. I mean, there was pretty much, hey, it's all good, so to speak. The Manchu, not that way. They do have less tolerance when it comes right down to it, and um, they do make some use, limited, but they we've mentioned already the civil service exam comes back into some use during Manchu rule, and so again, another vehicle that some of the Chinese will be able to use to move themselves up socially if they're able to gain one of those special jobs within the civil service. All right, and then we get to the Manchu versus the Han. The Han was a ethnic designation given to some of the Chinese who, as part of just kind of tradition and culture, the men wore their hair in kind of like the style you see on this guy right here, okay, on the left, almost a little bit of kind of like a modified man bun sort of a thing. Now the Manchu, they wore their hairstyle in something called a queue, which is like this long ponytail that you see here. All right, and they basically, I guess is another sign of not having the tolerance that the Yuan dynasty had or others. The Manchu required all men in China to adopt the queue in terms of that hairstyle, and it was and the Manchu saw it as kind of like a sign of loyalty to their leadership over China, and the Han resisted. They valued the hairstyle that they used as kind of a connection to their culture, their past, their ethnicity, and yeah, they pretty much said, not going to do it. The Manchu stepped this up to, basically threats of and sometimes carrying out the sentence of execution for men who refused to adopt the queue. And at one point, the Manchu even used the Han against themselves. They were able to get some Han that kind of defect over to the Manchu side, and use them against Han who are continuing to resist. And so you end up having a number of massacres that take place against the Han because they're not, basically they're refusing to assimilate when you get right down to it. And so, this is how the Qing are going to lay down their control over China. And yeah, that's kind of where we'll leave them. Okay. Wear the queue or else. Well, I guess number 3. Getting ahead of myself again. What we define, for those of you with good memories from AP Hug, what we defined back then as ethnic cleansing. Really, what the Manchu order is ethnic cleansing, which is everything from punishments mild to very extreme. Including death would be the extreme. Because of the resistance to some of these cultural changes, societal changes that are going on now in China under Manchu control. There we go. All right, let's shift it on over to Europe and what is going on in the changing of hierarchies over there. First of all, we have the ongoing. We talk about this in a couple examples. I know Russia comes into play, but we can expand beyond there. But there's always this tension between the royalty and the nobility. Okay, and a lot of times the nobility, the aristocracy, a lot of that comes from the owning of property, of land. And then you have your royalty that just see their powers as, pretty much just kind of divine. It comes from God. And there's always this push-pull that we seem to be having going on between these two, where the nobility is trying to push in and cut into the power that the royalty has, and then the royalty pushing back to try to exert their power. That continues on. Okay, these power struggles, we're going to see it in various places. It continues on in Russia, but we can see examples of it in some of the Western European countries as well. especially in those countries where they're beginning to weaken the power of monarchs with things like, the Magna Carta, the Glorious Revolution. These are all undercutting the power of monarchs, and consequently, it can be interpreted as giving more power to the nobility. So that's kind of an ongoing thing. I was just telling you here a moment ago about the Spanish kicking out the Jews, and this role of anti-Semitism continues on through this time period. We don't see the occurrence of some of the massacres against Jewish people that we saw back in, quote unquote, the Middle Ages. But anti-Semitism is still very much alive and well, and evidenced by the fact, like I said, that a number of countries, kind of led by Spain, take that really extreme step of rounding up and putting enough pressure on Jews to where they know that it's in their best interest to get out of their countries, and basically, I mean, passing nationwide bans on the practice of Judaism. All right, so that is still something that is going on. Like I said, not maybe as extreme in terms of the killing that went on earlier in history, but that doesn't mean that the anti-Semitism, it doesn't just go away. It just has a different look to it, and also at a time where we see increasingly in a lot of European countries that do allow Jews to stay, they limit them with laws in terms of what they can do in terms of a job, of a vocation. And in many countries, they don't allow Jews to take on jobs in terms of craftsmanship, things like that. And oftentimes, the only kind of careers that Jews find that they can follow have to do with banking, have to do with working in shipping business, commerce, things like that. And so in some of those European countries, that's where they are going to kind of hone in and really get good at the jobs that they are allowed to do, given the laws in some of those countries. All right, okay, let's flip it over here to Russia. It's a little bit more of the same in Russia. As far as, again, here we're talking about, the Tsar pushing back and forth against the boyars, something we talked about in prior units. Well, hey, there it is. Sometimes I forget myself. And that is something that, as Ivan there, goes away, and Peter comes in, and Peter goes away, and Catherine comes in, the czars and czarinas are going to change, but that tension is not. And again, it's trying to maintain that balance, and also trying to determine, who's gonna be at the top of everything here when it's all said and done. Okay. When we talk about societal change and hierarchies and all that sort of thing, yeah, you are going to see no more dramatic changes than what is going on in the Americas. Let's jump over here to the next slide to cover that. And so, as we've talked about already, the big one is going to be this idea that what your race is, what your ethnicity is really going to determine your social status. And we talked about, mestizos and mulattoes, and where that would end up placing you in the social hierarchy of these different colonies in the Americas. The Costa system. The Costa system that you see illustrated for you there on the right side was used in the Spanish colonies here in the Americas, and I think the one big takeaway you want is the rigidity of this system. There was very little gray area here. It was a very strict, very rigid social structure, and the bottom line, I mean, if you kind of look at the way things are arranged there, was pretty simple, and that is that the more European blood you had in you, the higher on the social ladder you were. Okay, And so, you have the different designations there, and yeah, the peninsulares were those who were at the top, and these are the people that were full-blooded Spanish who had come over to the Americas to run plantations, to run mines, to take on some of the governmental roles in administering colonies, that sort of thing. And then you just see the different classes as you go down there, and starting with the Criollos or Creoles. That's where you start to get the mixing of the indigenous peoples, and different classes are coming, or Africans as they start coming over, and then at the very, very bottom of the Costa system, you have the indigenous people and the slaves being brought over from Africa. Okay, so once you get past those, you start to see mixing, and then up to European, however you want to describe it, pure blood, whatever. But that is the Costa system. Like I said, the Spanish clung tightly to this in all of their colonies in the Americas. All right, and that gets us to here, which is going to be a very quick little review over what we've got going on here in Unit 4 and our time frame and all of our, kind of continuity and change. Again, College Board just loves it, loves it, loves it. Let's zip through these. First of all, we talked about, when I talk about Atlantic system, first and foremost, I want you to think about the Columbian Exchange. Okay, that's really what almost another way of describing the Atlantic system. And then, yes, we can then, over time bring in the transatlantic slave trade that's going on as well. The role of technology and allowing for the Columbian Exchange to occur when it comes to shipbuilding, when it comes to navigation, those sorts of things. Okay, and again, what we've talked about is almost this proto-globalization that's beginning to develop during this time frame. That's what we're talking about with A. For B, this is the period of time where we see Europe take that big step forward. Has been kind of constantly playing a game of catch up, and kind of copying, whether it's the Southwest Asia or East Asia. But now they're up on their own feet. Economically, they're becoming powerful through the use of the establishment, creating these empires and trade. Politically, they're becoming powerful. Militarily, they're becoming powerful. I mean, this is where we see Europe take that big, gigantic step forward. Okay. Colonial empires pretty much kind of speaks for itself. I mean, this is what is allowing Europe to rise, is as they spread their influence, both politically, militarily, economically, and compete against each other. While Europe is rising, they're also beginning to square off against each other. And we talk about some of the wars that are fought, 7 Years' War, things like that, competing against who's going to have the biggest empires and who's going to make the most money from them. Okay. Speaking of money, mercantilism and capitalism, a couple of these economic theories that really come to the fore during this time frame. And at the heart of both of these is kind of this idea of developing rules, policies, laws that is going to make sure that wealth that is coming from trade stays in the hands of government, stays in the hands of those who are in power. When I say in power, I mean those who are powering along these new trading companies that are forming up, that sort of thing. But also allowing for the growth of the middle class because of the explosion in both of those, mercantilism and capitalism. So the role in there. Again, the expansion, massive expansion of the use of slavery worldwide. As we mentioned, slavery has always been kind of this unfortunate part of the human experience on this planet. It still is, unfortunately, but where we see this massive explosion in the use of it and expansion in it is during our Unit 4 time frame. And then all the change that happens because of it, the change where the slaves are taken from, the land that is left, the people that are left, and then how it impacts the places that they are taken to, the creation of literally new cultures, Creole cultures, things like that. Okay, new languages, everything. And yeah, how all of this ends up resulting in these new structures. Well, I mean, really, what we just talk about in this video today. All right, I mean, whether it's the Costa system up above or some of the new structures mentioned in other parts of the world, and then boom, overall effects. This is pretty much just the whole concept that this is basically this is all a setup for what we're going to hit in Unit 5. And Unit 5 is going to be all about revolutions. Some of them are going to be more in technologies. Some of them are going to be political. Some of them are going to be bloody. But really, it's going to be, this is what's going to basically set the table for this era of revolution. Because behind the scenes on everything that's going on here in Unit 4, we're going to start to see tensions reach a breaking point on many very different levels. And we're also going to see some of the technological changes that start with the exploring and all that coming out of the Renaissance era through the scientific revolution is also going to quote unquote bear fruit in some real significant ways when we look at the rise of industries and new technologies. So boom, there we go. Do I even have a last slide there? Oh, I do. Fini. Another unit down. All right. I would have preferred to finish it with you in person, guys, but what can I say? It's where we're at. Anyhow, I got it done in less than 30 minutes. So proud of myself. And hope to see you soon, gang. Keep it safe. All right. And till then, bye.